My name is Shalini Chander. I have been a Sidebar member for a year, and I'm really excited to host today's session, which is the Art of Influence with Milam Miller. Milam is the founder of Be Confident and Kind, a leadership and soft skills consultancy, and helps organizations build more charismatic, connected, and emotionally intelligent leaders, which is so critical to all of us. He's got a background spanning senior commercial roles in sports and entertainment. He's negotiated over 100 million in partnerships before shifting his focus now to human-centered leadership development. Today, he's speaking and coaching globally on the power of confidence, kindness, and authentic connection in driving performance in the modern workplace. And I am so excited to have him with us today to speak about confidence and kindness and leadership. So, Milam, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here today. Welcome everybody in the room. It looks like we have about 15 going on 16 participants, and I see some familiar faces. Nydia, good to see you. I saw you join. Todd already gave you a shout out, and everyone else, Elizabeth, the warm smile. I genuinely appreciate you all being here today. So today we're going to talk about the art of influence, how to win hearts, minds, and deals. As mentioned, I'm Milam Miller. I've also been referred to as the real life Ted Lasso because of my work in European football, which we will get into. Be Confident and Kind, as mentioned, was started to serve RevGen leaders, anyone in a role that is responsible for bringing in revenue, working with people, working with others. I am trusted by Amazon Web Services, Google. Some of you may have worked at these companies or currently do. So I'm excited to have you all in the room. And again, appreciate the intro. We're going to dive right in because I'm sure you're thinking, how in the world did a boy from Texas work in European football? Let's go back to the beginning. I want everyone right now, call to action, drop in the chat. What was your childhood dream? Or in other words, what did you want to be when you grew up? Let's get some things going. Gary, I hear pondering. Feel free to. A dolphin trainer. Okay. A runway model. Work it. Let's go. Archaeologist, writer. Ooh, playing a World Cup final. I understand why you're here. Nydia, football, soccer player. Thank you for clarifying. Doctor, an engineer, social worker, a fiction writer. Wonderful. Thank you for all of these shares. Well, my dream growing up was rather simple. It was to work in professional sports. How was that going to work out for me? I grew up in Texas, and I only knew one type of sport, or what I like to call a religion, and that is football. I'm sorry for any Dallas Cowboys haters in the room, but yes, I am based in Dallas. Loved this dynasty of the early 1990s. And always loved telling people that when Jerry Jones bought the team in 1989, it was valued at 110 million US dollars. The team is now valued at $13 billion. So win or lose, the Cowboys are doing something right. Knowing that religion or that love for football, I thought that I would ultimately ascend to work in it. But instead, I went across the pond and worked in global football for a team called AS Roma in Rome, Italy. Raise your hand if you've heard of Roma. It's kind of a niche club. Anybody? A lot of cameras off. That's okay. Well, we've got another friend in the room. I love it. I love when I see people I know. Thank you for being here. Well, Roma is one of two teams in the city of Rome. And we coincidentally share the colors with the city of Rome, that is red and yellow. And so there was a unique branding opportunity, just like the Dallas Cowboys have become America's team, for AS Roma to become the team of the Eternal City. Now, we had an American owner, and he had a really, really bold vision for the club. We had a blueprint for commercial success. That was to build a modern day Colosseum in Rome, where there is the famous Colosseum, or Colosseo. In order to do that, we knew we needed best in brand partners. A lot of the sponsors that we inherited, and again, I'm using these words very intentionally, sponsor versus partner, were smaller brands that you wouldn't recognize. Maybe it's a very niche coffee brand in Italy, or water brand for that matter. But we wanted to kind of play a different game. We had a blueprint to actually build a stadium, entertainment district, and office park. And we knew we wanted to do that with fewer, bigger global brands. So think Coca-Cola Coliseo, for example, as a stadium naming rights partner. But we knew in order to do that, we need to get to know our partners and their marketing challenges. And most importantly, we need to influence key decision makers with what I like to call healthy charisma or care. That's what we're going to talk about today. Again, the art of influence. How do we do that? How do we influence them from a place of genuine care? Now, I know this works. You're probably thinking this all sounds great, but again, it sounds soft skills. Here are the tangible benefits. Based on the strategy we put in place, the commercial strategy, we were able to secure the club's largest commercial partner ever, that being Qatar Airways. You might recognize some other logos at the top of this pyramid, including Nike or Hyundai. As a result of this fewer, bigger global strategy, we 4x'd our commercial revenue, going from 4 or 5 million euros per season upwards of 18 to 20 million euros per
Milam,
season.
we're not seeing slides.
Yeah, sorry, Milam. I was going to just interrupt and say the same thing. Your
Oh
slides
my
aren't shared.
gosh. Oh no. Oh no. I'm so glad y'all told me. I thank you for intruding. Bear with me. I thought we were all set up. Can you see them now? No.
No.
Okay. Okay. We're just gonna have to go in. Sorry, team. Sorry. So from the top, America's team went overseas, mentioned the strategy. Here we are. Everybody up to speed? Just shout me out because I'm not going to be able to see the chats now. I just see the slides, but everyone can see them. Can I get
Milam, sorry. No, I can't see them.
You can't see
No,
them.
Same.
Maybe
no, I think no one
privileges.
else can see them. Oh, I'm in them. I'll close them out.
Technical difficulties, everybody. That's all right. We're going to try one more time. Okay. I think I got it. I got it. Here we go.
Yep, there we go. So
There
if
we
you throw
go.
that in presentation mode, we should be good.
Now we can see chat. Everybody,
Yes,
we're
thank you.
round two. All right, y'all. I'm going to back it up just for my visual learners out there. You all know who I am. I'm happy to be here. Cowboys. I'm from Dallas, worked in Rome. Here we go. Commercial role. This was the stadium blueprint, as mentioned. A stadium, a entertainment district, and then an office park. RIP COVID. We don't see tall office towers like that much more these days. And then finally, the results, as mentioned. The most important thing to note here is finding partners who actually want to do business with you requires operating from a place of care. You can't just sell a deal and expect it to take off. You've got to continue to work at it and understand what the person on the other side of the table is looking for and needs. So, what happened was when one door closes, another one opens. After 7 years of delivering no trophies to our fans, and unfortunately that stadium vision being halted, we sold our team. And as a result, I started Be Confident and Kind. This was a private mantra I had whenever I was building global partnerships because it was my formula for success. And I realized it could be a movement. There's research that actually suggests when we are confident in things we're competent in and kind or warm with those we're doing business, then that is a formula for charisma, which is what I compiled into my latest book. It is called The Charisma Craft. And today I'm going to share some lessons from that book, including just one framework, which is the Lasso framework on how to win, again, hearts, minds, and deals. So here's another way to think about hearts, minds, and deals. I call it the heart, head, cred. And I basically just took you through it. The heart story of me growing up in Texas, loving football and working in not the one I expected to work in. And then the headspace, the logic of a strategy for a team like AS Roma to become a global commercial brand. And then most importantly, the cred, the things that we did to build trust and credibility and ultimately land deals. And not just land deals, but renew deals as well. So keep this in mind because I'm going to reference heart, head, and cred throughout the presentation. And that might be a little bit of an easier way to think about what is required as we're pursuing influencing with the heart, the mind, and ultimately closing deals. So another powerful question for you. This is an opportunity to drop in chat or come off mute. What is influence? I'm not seeing anyone come off chat, but that's okay. And
I just put the ability to lead without authority.
that is precisely it. Thank you so much for that share. So, influence is the ability to lead without authority or convince someone to support and implement plans and strategies. It's also a way to persuade someone to do something by changing their attitudes and beliefs. We all have ingrained belief systems, but most importantly, and I think this is really empowering and cool, y'all, it's the capacity to have the effect on someone's character. Think, for example, if you don't, somebody you're not managing, somebody who's not on your team, just the way you lead or the way you interact in an office setting can have the effect on someone saying, I want to be more like her. I want to be more like him or them. So influence really is the ability to be the person you would like to be. Now, what is not influence? Let's get really clear. It's important that we label what it is, but what is it not? There's one word that typically comes to mind whenever I ask this in a session. Does anybody want to name it?
Not selling.
Christina said not selling. Perhaps. Yes. And what else?
I think of like yelling and like using anger and emotion to convince or fear to convince people.
Ah, so yelling or getting clear on the emotion, anger, or um, the word fear is coming up. So let's name what influence is not. It's not manipulating. There it is, getting angry and manipulating others. It's not relying on that authority or power. We might not even have it by title or by position to impose our will on someone else or on someone or something. Simply put, we do not want to coerce colleagues. You must stay till midnight to finish this assignment, or else you're not getting an end of year bonus. That is not influencing. That is not getting the best out of our teams, our people. And it's certainly not misleading, as you said, Christina. Thank you. A prospect or a client in order to achieve an outcome that only benefits you. In order to grow our influence, we want to make sure that both parties see a win-win. So why does this matter? This is really critical. I just saw a stat on this from the World Economic Forum last night. Top 10 skills in the future of work. Why does influence matter? I'm seeing some great shares in the comments. Yes, cross-functional teams are getting bigger. That's right. Impact. So influence matters because 80% of the outcomes on cross-functional teams are driven by influence rather than formal authority, as somebody mentioned in the chat. As these cross-functional teams are getting bigger, we need people who can step up in a way that is authentic and caring in order to figure out solutions to problem solve. Also, influence-based leaders boost team engagement by up to 37%. We want those leaders that are charismatic, magnetic, that showcase confidence, but also kindness. They don't neglect that part. And then most importantly, y'all, let's call a spade a spade. We're all professionals here. The ones who are skilled at influencing without authority are more likely to gain stretch assignments and leadership roles and get what we all want, which is promotions or raises. I imagine that's why many of you are part of the Sidebar community, to raise the bar alongside one another, get better, ask questions, learn, try things on. So influence matters if we want to continue to elevate in organizations and do things that are meaningful and have impact. So last question, and then we're going to dive into the framework. What skills, if the future of work is skills-based in many ways, and by the way, that World Economic Forum had influence listed as number 7 in their top 10 list of things for us to develop as we embrace the future of work. What other skills are required in order to learn this art of influence? Yes, listening. Brilliant, Elizabeth. What else? Empathy. Bingo, 100%. Spot on. Communication. Absolutely. Perception, taking, aka understanding. Yes, Kim. So all of these, in fact, the first one in my framework is building trust. And one way to do that is through listening or what we call active listening. So I want to introduce the Lasso Way learning framework. This has 5 lessons underpinned by 5 skills, underpinned by 5 tools. Okay. What we're going to do is I'm going to work our way back up. We're going to use these tools in order to build the skills we're talking about and reinforce the lesson. If at any point a tool is unclear or you want to better understand the examples I'm using, just pause or put your question in the chat, and I will make sure we parking lot it and pick it up for Q&A at the end. So in order to contextualize our learning and make sure we have a through line, I'm going to use Qatar Airways as my example for all 5 of these. This was a massive deal that unfolded in ways really unexpected for me. I thought the American mentality, we're going to fly to Doha, going to have a business case, highly logical, head space, and we'll be in and out. But that's not what happened. So my hope is that by sharing the lessons we learned about how to influence key decision makers, but also influence internal stakeholders in order to get a deal across the line, will help you learn this framework. And at the end, if you can just pick one letter or one tool that you want to practice, implement in your day-to-day, then we'll know this session will have been successful to you or of benefit and to your time. Okay, so lesson number 1 is called listen to learn. Why do we need to listen to learn? Because when we actually listen, it builds trust. We know this is an important aspect, or think about it as the foundation for any sort of relationship. If we can build the trust, then we can grow rapport on top. The tool that I like to use is what I call listen to learn, the 3L technique, listen to learn. What does that mean? That means we need to lead with curiosity. What did that look like with this negotiation? In fact, even before we even got in a negotiation with Qatar Airways, when we were building the relationship, it sounded like, and bear in mind, this is to give you the vocabulary, it sounded like, help me understand what is your global sponsorship strategy in football? Then we need to label their emotions or intent, whatever the other party's sharing. In this case, it might have sounded like, it sounds like you're aiming for few partnerships in football. At this time, Qatar Airways had only partnered with Barcelona. You may have known a famous footballer that played for FC Barcelona by the name of Leo Messi. So based on what we were inquiring about with curiosity, we were able to label the emotions or intent as, perhaps there's not a strategy yet. You only have one football club partnership, but you are looking to expand. Do I have that right? And get really curious about what the strategy, if any, exists. And then we want to loop their words back. In the case of Qatar Airways, they actually said, really what we're looking to do is not sponsor more football clubs across Europe, but promote the goodwill of the country, or promote our host country as the host of Qatar World Cup 2022. So what this really required was pulling in other entities. Qatar Airways was the consumer-facing commercial brand, but they needed it to pull in the Aspertar Clinic and the Supreme Committee and various entities that were hosting and putting on the World Cup. So what I'm hearing, or what we were hearing in that moment, was this isn't just a deal with one stakeholder. There's multiple stakeholders that will need to go and meet and build trust. What did that actually look like in principle? It wasn't boardroom settings, but it was going to the souks and getting to know all the host stakeholders of the country. It was dining on the tallest restaurant of Doha. And again, leading with curiosity, labeling emotions or intent of what's possible leading up to the World Cup, and then ultimately looping their words back to, I understand you do need other partnerships. Could we potentially be the right one for you? Any questions on the importance of the 3L technique, listen to learn, through leading, labeling, and looping? Okay, thanks, Elizabeth, for the head nod. So lesson number 2 is this. We want to acknowledge and we want to affirm. Why? Because when we acknowledge and affirm what the other party's saying, this could be not just in the case of this example, a prospect, Qatar Airways, but even a colleague, a coworker, then that showcases that we understand what motivates them. The way to do this is what I like to call the AMP technique. It's very simple. We want to appreciate the other person's perspective. We want to mirror back any key concerns. And then we want to pivot towards any shared goals or objectives and not get caught up in the concern space. So what did this look like for Qatar Airways? As we got to know them in the souks and at dinners and places outside of boardroom settings where we were really building trust, we realized that one of their primary motivations for sponsoring a football club was visibility. Nielsen and other reputable sources say that a front of shirt jersey partnership is the most visible asset in all of sport. Not only that, but there's often LEDs that sit behind the players whenever they're on the pitch, and we see logos that flip in brand domination. So what happened in conversations with Qatar Airways, we realized okay, we know that they're eager to sign more partnerships leading up to the World Cup, but what are their motivations in order to of who they're going to sign them with? We quickly realized that the most important LED minutes, in which case we want to acknowledge that. We want to say, that's a great point that you're seeing a lot of ROI on LED minutes. I see why this asset or this visibility tool matters to you. Also, there's always concerns with that because we as a club have limited inventory. Perhaps that's already been sold through to other partners. So when we hear, in this case, Qatar Airways say we want minimum 10 minutes, we say we hear that you need at least 10 minutes, but we might have some concerns around asset allocation. Leave it with us to figure out what we can do to understand your motivations and make sure they're met. And then finally, we want to pivot because we don't want to oversell or overpromise something that we can't deliver on. So we say things like, what if we built our agreement by saying we can promise you at least 7 minutes to start, and then explore other assets, other make goods, other things that would actually matter to you. Let's pivot towards the shared goal of let's use Rome and Fiumicino, a capital city, capital club, as an asset for you all to promote direct routes and flights to the World Cup in 2022. Any questions on how we acknowledge and affirm in a way that appreciates, mirrors, and pivots away from concerns that can get in the way of the art of influence? Okay. I see a no from Elizabeth. We're going to keep going. So lesson number 3, we want to speak with stories and stats. We don't want to forget this. Now, you may have noticed that my emoji changed. Leading up to this, we're using a lot of heart energy, really wanting to build trust, wanting to understand motivations. Now is the time where we can move into the headspace. There's no better way to get somebody thinking or daydreaming about something else than by telling them an engaging story. And we've got to back that story up with stats to showcase our credibility. So what we want to do is demonstrate expertise, but not that we know it all, just the fact that we're credible enough to be sitting at the table or be in partnership or conversation with said person. How do we do this? Let's spill the tea, y'all. This one's really fun. Let's teach in a way that shares vision succinctly. Let's emote and talk about the human impact. And then let's anchor. We want to anchor with data. So in our case at AS Roma, we obviously had the football club that was performing on the pitch, but we also had this grand vision of a new stadium. That was our project. You may have other projects that you lead on cross-functional teams, or you may have projects you're working on behalf of clients. We want to say things like, our main aim for this project is blank, and name it in a way that tells the vision or teaches a story that they'll remember in a really succinct fashion. So for us, it was our main aim is for the next Christina, the next Nydia, the next Elizabeth who comes to Rome to go see the old Colosseum and then come by and see us at the new Colosseum. We know it will help locals in the city of Rome. We're going to create 7,000 new jobs. And here's why it matters to you is because if you partner with us on this project, we know there's going to be footfall of over 14 million people annually. Telling a story that is visual, come to the new stadium. You'll be able to get there by taxi, ferry, boat, even if you come via cruise ship into Civitavecchia, the port, giving them an idea of all the ways or of how all the roads lead to Rome, but also in a way that demonstrates the impact for those that will be working there. I think Disney World, like how many people work at Disney World and how welcoming do they make it? But then anchor with the logic and data of not only will this employ 7 million new jobs, but 14 million people will come through this new site. Any questions about speaking with stories and stats? Or I'd love for people to drop an example if you've had to do this on a team in which you were trying to influence other decision makers. I see some people typing. Maybe. Any questions on the T technique? Teaching, emoting.
I find that people want to invest in momentum too. So if you can tell a story and create momentum, then it's going to drive that conversation. And so I see it whether it's working with I work with a lot of financial professionals, and so yes, they want to learn how to make more money, but it's kind of helping them achieve their goals by aligning with their business objectives. And so I think it's if you can kind of relay your stories about transfer credibility to how another similar client is doing something that allows them to achieve their objectives and not create that fear of missing out, but like, here's what you could accomplish with working with us, I think is a good way to use storytelling.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Tucker. So instead of telling them what's working for other clients, teaching this has worked, here's been the impact, and then anchoring with that logic or data. I absolutely love that. I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Storytelling is an area of growth for me. Thanks for being so vulnerable, Elizabeth. I agree. We can all get better at it, especially even now. I'm trying not to critique myself as I'm telling you all a story. Storytelling in any capacity and teaching and emoting is always a huge draw. Adding data to the point is the convincing cherry on top. Love that. Cherry on top, or I'll use maybe a tea as our analogy, It's maybe a little bit of milk on top, something to that effect. So I want to use Tucker's comment around momentum to take us to our next lesson, which is lesson number 4. And that is simplify the next step. Whenever we are having conversations where we're influencing others, we want to make sure we continue to simplify things to keep that momentum going. One way to do that, and just an incredible way to simplify anything, is to communicate effectively, period, full stop. How do we do that? We do that through what I like to call the yes technique. Why is it called yes? Because the idea is to get a yes to the next step. What does that stand for? It means yield to the momentum. We do not want to oversell. That means if we try to add more things, add complexity, add too many cherries on top, we get overwhelmed. We forget the actual facts at play. We forget what we're actually trying to accomplish. We also want to eliminate extra options and distractions. And then we want to just specify one clear next step. And let me be extra clear, just one. Not 2 next steps, not 3 next steps, just one next step. So what did this look like in the case of Qatar Airways? We ultimately found out that the most important thing to them was, again, visibility, but maybe not just through LED minutes. It seemed that we needed for some additional things that would simplify the next step. In that case, we offered them covered seating and tarps to give them visibility that would not yield the momentum for the more grandiose vision we had. Now, if I didn't make it clear, let me make it clear now. That grandiose vision we had was actually having them be a stadium partner. But the stadium didn't exist. We still just had the football product or club on the pitch. So we didn't want to yield the momentum we were having for a club partnership to a later stadium naming rights. So while we were talking about skinning seats and putting covers across the bleachers that would say Qatar Airways that would pick up TV broadcast visibility, we had to work within the confines of our existing stadium, not the new stadium we were building where we could actually plan for them to be integrated. So what seemed to make the most sense for them was offer minimum 10 minutes of LED if we could find them back, offer make goods, and then just eliminate any fluff. The fluff in this case was do not sell a stadium naming rights partnership whenever the stadium isn't ready yet. We talked a lot about a pathway, be a global partner of the club, and then stadium naming rights partner. We had to kill it. We just had to eliminate it. Let's talk about what's at play. In other words, why don't we put a pin in the stadium project? Let's revisit it once it's coming online. And then finally, we had to specify just one next step. In this case, it was, we're ready to move forward with a contract. Is your legal team ready? Then they know, okay, we actually have something to review. The next step is to look at something tangible and redline it. Any questions on simplifying the next step when we're influencing decision makers, influencing teams? Maybe you've simplified the next step for somebody you manage. Maybe for them, they're overwhelmed by a number of tasks, a number of projects, and you look at the one that has the most momentum and you eliminate the others as distractions and say, let's just move forward on this project by when, by this date. And can we take this one next step by, say, next to Thursday? So think about how this works for you and your team, even if my example isn't exactly the role you're in. Any questions so
My-lum,
far?
I would add, I like how you phrase that ending point of a yes or no question. Is your legal team ready to move forward? Question mark. Because I think a lot of times when I sell, I'm like, let me know if you have any questions. I like, I hope this has been, I'm leaving it to chance that maybe they'll respond to my email. But I think psychologically ending, is your legal team ready to move forward? We've done all the storytelling and the negotiation, and now it's time for the clear next step. And I think that's really intelligent.
I'm happy you're highlighting that, Tucker, because when we started this listen to learn 3L technique, it's open-ended questions. It's what more do you need from us?
Discovery.
Yeah, it's discovery. And as we're moving in this case through the sales pipeline, or moving through this art of influence, we've got to simplify the next step and use that brain logic, again, this headspace, to try to get a yes or no, eliminate any sort of maybe so, any sort of gray area. Now, I
That
realize
was my
this,
second favorite answer.
yeah, there you go.
There's clarity.
And no is clarity. That's right. So again, this yes technique is intended to get that clarity we need. All right, moving on, unless there's no questions, to lesson number 5, which is overcome obstacles with optimism. Now, I love this one because it really speaks to Ted Lasso for anyone who's seen the show. He's so optimistic, and he reminds me to channel my optimism in order to seek the outcomes that I wish to achieve. And the same can be for you. One of the secret weapons in business is optimism. Just if there's a will, there's a way. We will figure out a way to persevere and overcome. So what's the skill we're talking about here? It's persuading outcomes, or like I said, persevering to get the outcome you want to achieve, you and your team, not for the benefit of you, but for the benefit of all parties involved. So in order to do that, we need to embrace a POV technique. We know what our point of view is, but we need to embrace their point of view. So how do we do this? P stands for pause. We need to pause to reset tone and avoid getting defensive or becoming a know-it-all. We want to be credible. We want to showcase expertise, but we don't have all the answers, and we're never going to have all the answers. Then we want to observe what's really blocking progress. This might require us to silence any voices or storytelling we do of what we think is blocking progress, and actually ask them, what's getting in the way here? What have we not addressed that would be productive for us to move this conversation forward? And then finally, this is so important, we talked about it, and acknowledge and affirm, we want to validate before we reframe. So in the case of Qatar Airways, what ended up happening was we'd flown to Doha. We had met them. We had built the foundation of trust. We had listened to learn. We had acknowledged and affirmed the most important things to them, the LED minutes. We had told stories of this global showcase. We'd backed it up with stats and numbers. And then we tried our best to simplify the next step. And yet we were still at a halt. We were at a roadblock. What can we do to overcome this obstacle of them not wanting to partner with us? And how do we embrace optimism? Really, what it required was us just pausing and saying, do you have all the information you need? What do you not have? You do have it all? Great. We'll be ready whenever you are. That's it. Leave it to trust. Don't pester, don't chase. We get so many, or I know I do at least, you'd probably do too, so much cold outreach. Hey, did you see this? Can I send you this video? Did you see my last email? Bump, bump, bump. Friendly reminder per my last email. When has pestering ever helped us? It hasn't. We want to just pause. We want to pause and also assume positive intent, that they've read it, they have all the information they need, we've done everything in our power. And then let's observe. Let's observe if there's agitation, if we're in an in-room setting or even a Zoom setting. And let's ask the question, what's getting in the way of us continuing this conversation? Is it somebody who hasn't been in the room, or have you said anything? Have you not said anything that you would like to say? Speak now or forever hold your peace. And we really want to observe it without judging it. And then finally, we want to validate what that is we're observing. We understand budget might be tight leading up to the World Cup. We understand that resources might be scattered trying to put on something that's never happened before in a Gulf Coast country. We're committed to being your partner. So when we say we're committed to addressing somebody else's needs on their timeline, they're more willing to work with us. This is where a handshake deal starts to happen of, okay, you can work on our timeline within our needs. Now we're talking. Now I feel as if though I have a true partner and you're not just asking for something from me. So to recap this learning framework, in order to win hearts, minds, and deals, or heart, head, and cred, which I showed that other thing. We want to do the 3L technique, which is listen to learn, through leading, labeling, and looping back. We want to acknowledge and affirm. We want to speak with story and stats. We want to simplify the next step. And then we want to overcome with optimism, really validating their POV and making sure that we've done everything in our power to understand what that is. This is what turns any sort of friction, both internally and externally, especially if you're in a negotiation, into persuasion. I see a hand from Kim. Go ahead.
Yeah, My-lum, I'm curious. These are I'll love the lessons, definitely. I'm curious, applying all five because they've got different components to it at the same time could maybe be a challenge to that. So which one would you prioritize if somebody was really thinking about evolving their approach?
Love your curiosity. Thanks for asking the question. These aren't steps, right? They are lessons. I think that's important to note. I do think prioritization is personal, and that's not me trying to dodge the question. But what I would say, if I were to start with any of them, it really is the 3L technique. Because as mentioned, trust is the foundation for any sort of internal partnership with a colleague, coworker, a team, someone you're trying to positively influence. It's also the foundation for any sort of deal making, any sort of renewal. When trust erodes, we've got to start all over, right? And so it's hard to earn back trust. So I think if we can stay in that headspace of curiosity and actively listen, then we get more data early on to inform where the conversation or where the relationship grows. Okay, thank you for that question. Elizabeth, it feels like there's some overlap between the lessons. Getting the 3Ls down makes the other lessons earlier. Yeah, I do think there's an element of foundational building. Again, it's not necessarily steps, but we are building upon our learning. Any other thoughts, questions? Let's challenge it. Let's poke holes in it. What would you do or what have you done that has helped you learn this art of influence or positively influencing others?
My-lum, this is Kim again. I
Yeah.
love I'm with you on asking about the next best step, but I also take a negotiation tactic on leading with looking for their first no. So that way it's asking a question that's saying, would there be any opposition to starting the contract? We're ready with the red line. Any concerns with starting with the contract tomorrow? We can send it over.
Right. I love what you're highlighting here, Kim, of creating a little bit of an urgency without putting pressure. It's just stating it in a way that's not manipulative, but it is my team's ready and we're ready to go tomorrow or whenever legal's prepared to do so. I think that what I want to highlight here is oftentimes in organizations, cross-functional teams, it's hard to get other teams aligned with maybe our tempo or our pace or what we want or what we've already communicated to prospect potential client. So in order to communicate that, oftentimes when I talk about this, the T telling a story and anchoring on facts, make sure you're telling the truth and what is the state of play. Because I know in the case of this deal making with Qatar Airways, we were informed by a project management team while we were also lobbying the municipality and the politicians, and we had certain green lights we were given. So, but ultimately we had to push back a lot of those green lights because the stakes kept changing, the timelines kept changing, and we weren't trying to lead anyone on or manipulate or falsify things. We were just saying this project timeline has shifted and it's on us to communicate those expectations. So again, that's where we can simplify the next step by communicating effectively. Hey, this changed. Here's why. Here's what it means for you. And if you have any questions, we're available to dialogue and discuss. What else? What else? Okay, I'm going to keep going for the sake of time, which is if you want to learn more just about what I call the charisma craft, which is two-way human connection, not one-way attraction. In other words, how do we make somebody else feel so seen, heard, remembered, and validated that they view you as charismatic when that may not even be your intent? It's less about you. It's because you're putting the fixation on them. It's my modern day interpretation of Dale Carnegie: to be interesting, be interested. It is about to be available on audiobook, which is really exciting. I had over 130 auditions and found an incredible partner who understood my vision, Carlos Figueroa. And so you can find that on Amazon if you want to learn more. And without further ado, ask me anything. Let's fire away. This QR code is not right. We will drop in the chat your feedback form, and I would love to answer any questions. Don't be a stranger. I want to chat with y'all.
I have a
Can be
question.
yeah, go ahead, Tucker, please.
This is excellent. Thank you so much for the very valuable information. I think
the last point on one of the previous slides about turning friction and into persuasion, I think is helpful. I'm dealing with this in real time. A lot of times in a deal conversation, I get very emotional, or I get invested in my clients and in people, but I sometimes really need to talk myself into you know, bearing the ego, and I still want to be professional and make sure I'm getting the deal across. But if I get emotional, then I feel like I'm losing credibility. And so I think the way you articulated it with overcoming that with optimism is helpful. So I was just wondering if there are any strategies where you felt like you're getting emotional, or I always want to treat people with respect. And so how do you kind of be professional in all those settings? Any advice for the group?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Tucker. And also your vulnerability about getting emotional. We are human beings. So there's nothing wrong with having emotions. It is a matter of how we self-regulate in the
I never want
workplace.
to put something in writing that I'll regret either. So I think that's always good to get on a call. That's one thing
That's
I've learned.
That's right. So let's take it back to the P. If you find yourself getting emotional, pause. The power of the pause is so, so important. Our breath, I always say, is our anchor. For anyone who enjoys breath works or somatics in the workplace, take a breath, take a beat before you send that email. Go on a walk, get some fresh air. And often what I find is that then when we move to that O, we observe what's really blocking it. We realize oftentimes it's us, the things that we want so badly. So we need to put ourselves in the other person's shoes and think about their POV and validate something they say. I always say this is also Dale Carnegie 101. It's easier to catch bees with honey than it is with vinegar. Validate something that's important to them and then share something that's important to you. This is where we create that win-win, right? This is where we're going to get the handshake deal. So power of the pause, observe what's really going on with you is what I'm hearing you say, Tucker. Those emotions come up, and then validate something on their end and keep that optimism going forward. Because if both parties are committed to getting a deal done, you'll find a way. Optimism is what will drive you forward, not force. Yeah, Elizabeth, I love that. Love that.
My-lum,
I do.
I'd love to ask a quick question. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. What adjustments or nuances do you feel are necessary when you're talking about people of different cultures or backgrounds, right? Like if you're working with Japanese clients, for example, they're less open generally than an American client, just to generalize. And so some of these things, how do you not come across nosy and with the right intent, but also kind of adjusting for cultural norms?
Sure. Love that question, Nydia. Thanks so much for asking it. Um, I guess one clarification before I answer. I've never done business in Japan. So while I love your example, I'm not a credible authority to speak to that one. What I know to be true is they really uphold a lot of reverence or respect when doing business, but I have no personal anecdotes. In the case of this example that I used as our through line, the
Yeah.
case study of Qatar Airways, I had never done business in the Gulf Coast, any of the GCC countries. So flying over there, I remember we landed at Hamad International Airport. It's gorgeous. For anyone who has been can attest to it. If you haven't been, it's probably one of the best airports in the world. And went to a W hotel. And I'll give you just a brief example, Nydia. I didn't realize I'd done my research that it was a dry country, but I didn't know what that meant. So whenever I checked in and I saw at the W Hotel in Doha a wet hour, meaning, you could imbibe an alcohol from 5 to 7, I thought, oh, this is going to be really interesting. We're not going to be going for drinks before dinner or afterwards for a nightcap. So I would just encourage the group, really this is encouragement, is do your homework with whomever it is you're doing business with, whomever it is you're leading, aspiring to lead, because we all come from different backgrounds, cultures, customs, and we may have our own belief systems or norms, but it's important that we get curious about theirs. And so that's ultimately what led us to the souks in Doha. We did have a boardroom setting meeting, but that was just the initiation point. Really, it was important to them to show us their culture, to take us on a tour of the souk and other parts of town. And we quickly realized in order to establish that foundation of trust and really build a partnership, we're going to have to do these things, not necessarily as box checking exercises, but as a relationship building exercise. It's got to, if it matters to them, it needs to matter to us. So we need to show up. We need to be present. We need to showcase that level of human connection and care. So I would, I hope that answers your question about just doing your research and then doing right by them. And I also say, if you mess up, one of my favorite little things I do in live facilitations, and some of you may have heard of it, is called the ouch oops rule, where like you say something that inadvertently offends them, give them permission to say ouch, and then you can say, oops, my bad, what did I say that did not do right by you and your culture or customs? So that way you can learn and grow together.
Thanks.
You're welcome. We still have about 13 minutes till the top of the hour. I guess I went rather quick after being frazzled for not having slides up, if I'm totally honest. Is there anything you all want me to go back on? Anywhere we want to double click and go deeper?
I have a question. I'm always been a great fan of the Columbo technique, which maybe dates me a little bit. But where does that fit into your framework, I guess? Are you familiar with
You said,
Columbo, the Columbo, the detective show, remember?
Gary, I think I'm that might not be my generation, but I'm
Okay.
I'm curious to learn more. Can you drop it in the chat for everyone? It's Columbo, like COLU?
Yeah, it was a detective show called Columbo.
Columbo.
Um,
More of a Bond guy, if I admit it.
okay, this is a TV show. I'll put it in the.
Can you just briefly, maybe bottom line for us, Gary, what that stands for, or how you've used it?
Yeah, there was a TV show ran for like 30 years. And basically when he questioned someone, he would come in very unassuming to lower their guard and ask questions, and often use, oh, just one more thing. And then he would always sort of leave with a final question at the end that kind of revealed their guilt or something, found out. It's worth watching some of the TV shows just to.
I am intrigued by that. It sounds kind of in the thought leadership lane of Chris Voss, if you're familiar with his work, Never Split the Difference. I see Kim nodding her head, and it seems she has a lot of negotiation experience. One thing I would say, and Kim, feel free to offer your perspective, is actually I would not introduce something like kind of like an aha, I gotcha, because that's not in the spirit of influence, as opposed to in the spirit of like, I've got you figured out or I've got you pegged, right? It can feel a bit manipulative. In any negotiation, it's important to bring everything to the forefront. And then, like we talked about, eliminate in the yes technique. So strip back anything that's not helping advance the conversation. In the case of the Qatar Airways example, we'd introduced this big global vision for both the team and the new stadium project, right? You're affiliating with a club that's in a capital city that's building a modern day Coliseum where there's an old Coliseum. We quickly realized the stadium was getting in the way of really what they wanted, which was just the front of shirt visibility, the LED, and any sort of branding over the bleachers and seats. So we realized we can get a yes from them if we just meet them where they are, if we acknowledge it, affirm it, and simplify the next step. So I would be hesitant to introduce new stuff for fear that it could throw the negotiation off course, or you could be perceived as not trying to influence, but trying to trick.
Yeah, no, I really like that. Simplify the next step, because as salespeople, we always want to add more. We're just back off, get a yes. Okay, now go to the next step.
That's right, Gary. You can always, quote unquote, add more at a later time when it comes to renegotiate. Or in our case, whenever a 3-year deal cycle was up, it was a 40 million euro deal. What would it look like for us to upsell them in a way that's doing right by the client, not right by us? And that requires not having conversations in the 11th hour, right? 3 months before the deal's up, but having ongoing conversations throughout the 3-year term to really understand. It goes back to that idea of what really matters to them and why. I'm going to drop Columbo in there for anyone who wants to look it up. Ash, you are up next, my friend.
Great, thank you. So this was fantastic. Thanks so much, My-lum. When you started off with like the saying that you're the Ted Lasso, I don't know how you called it exactly. I knew that I was going to enjoy this session.
Thank you.
Specifically, I wanted to ask you, and I guess because you're an expert in this space, I do ask this to a few people that I try to learn from. Who would you say is the best salesperson that you know, and why? And I want to anchor on the why, because I'm sure that everybody who knows you would say that you are. And they'll have their reasons, right? Like that's just an assumption that I'm making. But the why will be pretty revealing about like, because you're in the space, what are they doing extremely well, whether it's within your framework or elsewhere that you think stands out and above.
Thank you for the question, Ash. I appreciate that. One thing I will say before I answer your question is I don't have a Ted Lasso mustache. And for those who did watch the show, of course, clarifying, I did not coach, right? I was on the commercial side of the business in the front office. But thank you. That's really kind, your compliment about the success we had and my sales abilities. I'm going to be totally honest with you, Ash. I need to treat this as an inquiry and come back to you because I don't know if I have just one person who I think is the best at selling. I think that what I'm all about and what I want to leave you all with, the audience with, is this is a very relational framework for selling. It's relational selling. It's not transactional. It's not, spray and pray or drive by at night, get the cash, take the money and run. Like that is not at all what we're suggesting. We're talking about building relationships where there's like mutual benefit as part of it. So yes, we are all in sales of some sort, whether you're selling a product, a service, a good, you name it, even selling yourself, right? In a influencing decisions by your manager for you to be, again, elevated in organizations and showcasing the work you've done. So I'm going to come back to you. I think if I were to kind of be cliche here, what I feel like Ted Lasso was really good at selling was this idea of self-belief, or what we talk about in the future work of developing self-efficacy, that we may not have all the answers today. We may not know how to do the job as well as we want to, but we have the belief that we can figure it out. Ted Lasso didn't teach anyone how to kick a soccer ball or put the goal in the back of the net, but he had them realize that they could develop that competency, and he helped build their confidence, and he was really kind to them. So again, I realize it's fictional. If I were to use a real life coach, I do talk about one in my book that I think was incredibly successful at selling his players on a vision, and that's Phil Jackson, right? He won so many NBA championships, and yes, he had phenomenal talent, Michael Jordan, cast of characters, Kobe Bryant, but he knew how to like sell the mind on this idea of self-efficacy.
My-lum, I could share a current events example if helpful.
Please.
And Ash, this might resonate. I mean, regardless of how you feel about politics, there's no denying that the Zohran Mamdani in New York, where I'm based here, was highly, highly effective at a clear message. New York is too expensive, and everyone very much could comprehend that. It was such a simple message, but then showing videos of him talking to real people and going around New York kind of built trust. And so again, not regardless of how you feel about politics, the effectiveness of a salesperson was masterclass.
Thanks for that
Yeah.
share. Yeah,
That's
go ahead.
great. Thank you both. And if I'm combining the answers, the through line that I'm hearing and the theme is, yes, the message matters. Yes, it needs to be a win-win, but really connecting on the emotional level is where you really convince people and you influence.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back because I really think if we start with emotions and the way in which we tell stories, and before we convey any sort of fact, right? Naming in Tucker's example the problem, and then maybe telling a story that is emotive and people can relate to, that heart energy of New York becoming too expensive or not the New York they once knew, is a great place to really start to influence the minds of people who have power, in the case of democratic power, right? The power to cast a ballot. I'm gonna ask on Nydia if he's willing to come off mute. Nydia, I don't know if you're busy, but Nydia is an incredible sales expert. If he has an example he wants to throw to the room.
Thanks for putting me on the spot, Milam. I was listening. I heard the Mamdani reference. What's the specific question I can try?
Ash,
Yeah. So my question is, and it doesn't need to be a public figure. It can also be somebody that you know personally, but really, like, who is the best salesperson that you know, and what makes them the best salesperson specifically?
Yeah. Unlike a 100-meter sprint where you can say Usain Bolt is the best sprinter because they wins the gold, I don't think in sales there's a one best person. on about 48% of my Uber rides, I'll engage in a conversation with the driver. And most of the time when they find out what I do, they say, can you give me the best sales skill? Or what's the best sales skill you can give me? Can you give me a free tip? I'm happy to give free tips. The best ask the best questions. And it's not easy. Like, we all know it intuitively, but in that moment, it's hard to not just give information. It's hard to stay in the curiosity mindset. 98% of salespeople will say you should ask open-ended questions. And then I say, give me some examples. Have you thought about this? Are you interested in this? Do you want this? Close, 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 right? And so sales is easy in theory. It's that in practice. And when My-lum talked about the objections piece, that's especially when it's hard to not respond and try to defend yourself, but to get into question mode. So I can't have, there's no one person. The best are just really good at engaging and asking genuine questions.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I recognize, picking one person is difficult. For me, that's the first part of the question, only because like I'll then reach out to that person to learn more. But the second part is the more helpful part. Thanks.
Sure. Nydia, thank you for that contribution. I realize we have about 2 minutes left. I want to leave everyone with one final thought off Ash's question. Ash, I mentioned 6 leadership archetypes in this book, many of them with tangential ties to for RevGen leaders, right? Anyone in a sales role. And one of those archetypes is called the seeker. And I use Allison Felix, the former track and field athlete who's been phenomenally successful off the track as well. And the reason I think she's effective at sales, for example, she has a shoe, is because she's doing exactly what Nydia highlighted. She's getting curious about things and asking questions, and realized that all of the professional shoes she ran in, the Nikes, the Asics, the New Balance, were built off a male foot prototype. So instead of being asked to pull up a seat to the table, she built her own table and created her own shoe called Seish off a female foot prototype. So it's these people that are seeking, that's why I call the leadership archetype that, answers and questions and staying curiosity, that I think are phenomenally successful. And if you don't follow Allison Felix, I think she's a phenomenal thought leader as a working mom, and she's got a number of business ventures beyond just Seish. So everyone,
I think we are at time, and so My-lum, thank you so much. Any last 20-second pearls of wisdom?
Oh, for me, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I was thinking any last minute 20-second. I was trying to stop my video share. I just want to extend gratitude to everyone. I know you are all busy working professionals. Thank you for taking the time to be here. And I would encourage you, just pick one tool, one lesson that you want to implement in your day-to-day, and feel free to drop me a line and let me know how that's working for you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, My-lum, so much. This was really great. For those of you who are still online, if you can take a look at this link in the chat just to give Sidebar and My-lum some feedback on this session. Would you like to have it back, etc.? That would be great if you could just take 30 seconds to fill that out. Otherwise, thank you all for attending. My-lum, thank you once again. This was great.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Take care.